Think you know everything about the Steve Harvey Show? From a 30-something rapper playing a teenager to George Wendt almost being Steve's roommate, this beloved 90s sitcom harbored some truly bizarre secrets. Behind the laughs were tragic murders, fake ages, rock and roll Hall of Famers in disguise, and TV scheduling controversies that would make your head spin. Prepare to see this classic show in a completely different light. Fact 1. A 30-year-old teenager. When viewers tuned in to the Steve Harvey Show during the late 1990s, they watched teenager Coretta, the Ox Cox, terrorize Romeo and Bullethead with her massive frame and tough attitude. What they didn't know was that the actress playing this high school student was actually older than several of the show's adult cast members. Robin Yvette Allen, better known by her stage name the Lady of Rage, was in her early 30s when she first appeared on the show in 1997, making her roughly the same age as Steve Harvey's character was supposed to be. The Lady of Rage had already established herself as a serious force in the hip-hop world before stepping into the halls of Booker T. Washington High School. Born in 1968, she had collaborated with Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg on legendary albums like The Chronic and Doggy Style, and her hit single Afro Puffs had reached number 5 on the Billboard Hot Rap Singles chart in 1994. By the time she joined the Steve Harvey Show cast, she was a 30-something veteran of the music industry, pretending to be a lovesick teenager chasing after Romeo. The age gap became even more absurd when you consider that Merlin Santana, who played Romeo, was actually 21 years old when the Lady of Rage first appeared on the show. This meant that the teenager pursuing him was nearly a decade older than the object of her character's affection. The show's casting directors were so focused on finding someone who could convincingly portray Coretta's intimidating physical presence and street-smart attitude that they overlooked the fact that their high school student had already lived through an entire adult career in the music business. During her time on the show from 1997 to 2000, the Lady of Rage was credited as Robin Yvette during season 4 episodes, perhaps in an attempt to distance her rapper persona from her acting role. Despite the bizarre age situation, her portrayal of Coretta became one of the show's most memorable recurring characters, proving that sometimes the best casting choices are the most unexpected ones. Fact 2. Cheers star almost changed everything. Before Cedric the Entertainer became Steve Harvey's best friend and roommate on the Steve Harvey Show, the producers had their sights set on a completely different kind of comedy partner. George Wendt, the beloved actor who played Norm Peterson on the hit sitcom Cheers, was seriously considered for the role of Steve's roommate during the show's development phase in the mid-1990s. George Wendt had become a household name playing the beer-loving, wisecracking regular at the Boston bar where everybody knew his name. His character Norm was famous for his deadpan delivery, his constant presence at the bar, and his ability to come up with clever one-liners about work, marriage, and life in general. By the time Cheers ended in 1993, Wendt had established himself as one of television's most recognizable character actors, making him an attractive option for producers looking to build a new sitcom around Steve Harvey. The idea of pairing Steve Harvey with George Wendt would have created an entirely different show than what audiences eventually saw. Instead of the natural chemistry between two African-American comedians who had worked together in the stand-up world, viewers would have witnessed an odd couple dynamic between Harvey's smooth-talking former funk star and Wendt's everyman character. The show's setting at a predominantly black high school in Chicago would have taken on different cultural implications with a white roommate character, and the comedic rhythm that made the actual show work so well might never have developed. Ultimately, the decision to cast Cedric the Entertainer instead of George Wendt proved to be crucial to the show's success. Cedric and Steve had already established a working relationship and friendship in the comedy world, and their natural rapport translated perfectly to television. The casting choice allowed the show to explore themes of friendship, community, and education within an authentic cultural context that resonated with audiences for 6 seasons, something that might not have been possible with the Cheers star in the role. Fact 3. Romeo's tragic real-life murder. On November 9, 2002, just 9 months after the Steve Harvey Show aired its final episode, 26-year-old Merlin Santana was shot and killed while sitting in a parked car in Los Angeles. The actor who had brought the smooth-talking Romeo to life for 6 seasons became the victim of a senseless murder that stemmed from a teenage girl's false accusation. Merlin Santana had been visiting with friends that evening when he encountered a 15-year-old girl who called herself Mercedes. She recognized him from television and gave him her phone number. And later that night, Santana called to invite her to the recording studio where he was working. What neither Santana nor his friend Brandon Quinton Adams knew was that the girl had been dropped off by 2 young men who were waiting in their car nearby. After the encounter, the teenager told a devastating lie to her boyfriend, 19-year-old Damian Andre Gates. She falsely claimed that Santana and Adams had tried to sexually assault her, a completely fabricated story that would have deadly consequences. Gates, believing his girlfriend's false accusation, became enraged and decided to take violent revenge against the actor who had done nothing wrong. Gates and his friend Brandon Douglas Bynes tracked down Santana and Adams as they were leaving in their car. Without warning, Gates opened fire on the vehicle, shooting Santana in the head and critically injuring Adams, who survived the attack. Santana was pronounced dead at the scene, his promising career cut short by a lie that a 15-year-old girl never explained or took back. The investigation revealed the truth about what had really happened that night. The girl, whose real name was Monique King, eventually admitted during police questioning that she had lied about the assault. Gates was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences plus 70 years in prison. King was found guilty of second-degree murder and received 10 years in juvenile custody. The senseless tragedy robbed the entertainment world of a talented young actor whose career was just beginning to flourish beyond his television success. Fact 4. Rock star hiding in plain sight. When Steve Harvey's character reminisced about his glory days with the fictional funk band Steve Hightower and the High Tops, viewers were watching a genuine music legend perform alongside the comedian. Ronald Isley, the lead singer of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame group the Isley Brothers, played Pretty Tony, one of Steve's former bandmates who would reunite with the group for special performances throughout the show's 6-season run. Ronald Isley brought an incredible musical pedigree to what was supposed to be a made-up 70s funk group. By the time he appeared on The Steve Harvey Show in 1996, Isley had already spent over 50 years as the frontman for one of the most influential groups in popular music history. The Isley Brothers had created timeless classics like Shout, Twist and Shout, It's Your Thing, and Who's That Lady, songs that had shaped the sound of rock, soul, and R&B for multiple generations of music fans. The fictional High Tops would perform their signature songs When the Funk Hits the Fan and Break Me Off a Piece of That Funk during various episodes, with Isley's unmistakable voice lending authentic musical credibility to these comedic moments. His smooth vocals and stage presence made the fake band's reunion performances feel surprisingly genuine, even though the songs themselves were created specifically for the show's storylines. What made Isley's participation even more remarkable was that he was actively creating real music during this same period. While playing Pretty Tony on television, he was collaborating with artists like R. Kelly and continuing to record new material with the Isley Brothers, maintaining his status as a working musician rather than just a nostalgic oldies act. The casting of Ronald Isley represented an unusual situation where a sitcom's fictional musical backstory included an actual music icon performing alongside actors pretending to be musicians. Isley appeared in 4 episodes between 1996 and 2001, often credited simply as Ron Isley, which may have helped some viewers overlook the fact that they were watching a genuine Rock and Roll Hall of Famer play a supporting role in a high school comedy. Fact 5. Levita's hilariously named family tree. Levita Alizé Jenkins, played by Terry J. Vaughn, brought more than just her bubbly personality and unique fashion sense to The Steve Harvey Show. She also brought one of television's most ridiculous extended families, where every single relative seemed to be named after consumer products, brand names, or everyday items that you might find at the grocery store or shopping mall. The running gag started with Lovita's brother Duracell, named after the famous battery company, and quickly expanded into an entire family tree of corporate-inspired names. Her cousins included Clinique, named after the cosmetics brand, Camay like the soap, Kinko after the coffee shop chain, and Bruschetta after the Italian appetizer. The writers didn't stop there, creating an ever-growing list of relatives with names like Tropicana, Crayola, Almay, Delco, Butene, Desinex, and even Solara, which sounds suspiciously like the Toyota car model. What made this joke even more absurd was how casually Lovita would drop these names into conversation, as if having a cousin named Nicorette or a relative called Exxon was the most natural thing in the world. The character would rattle off lists of family members attending various events, and viewers would hear names like Larangette, Bayonet, Dentine, and Motorola, mixed in with the occasional normal name like Julius, creating a comedic contrast that highlighted just how ridiculous the naming pattern had become. The writers even incorporated this gag into specific storylines, such as when Lovita mentioned that the famous poet Maya Angelou had suggested Motorola and DeVille as good baby names. In another episode, when Lovita and Cedric were pretending to be Bullethead's parents for a dinner with his girlfriend's cultured family, the product name Relatives became part of the backstory they had to navigate. This ongoing joke represented the show's ability to take a simple comedic concept and stretch it across multiple seasons, with writers continuously finding new product names to add to Lovita's family tree. The gag became so associated with the character that fans would eagerly wait to hear what new brand-inspired relative would be mentioned in each episode. Fact 6. Nickelodeon stars' secret crossover. Years before network crossovers became a regular part of television programming, The Steve Harvey Show quietly featured two of Nickelodeon's biggest stars in recurring roles that created an unofficial bridge between children's sketch comedy and primetime sitcoms. Kenan Thompson and Kel Mitchell, who were already household names from their work on All That and their own spin-off show Kenan and Kel, appeared in 4 episodes of The Steve Harvey Show between 1996 and 1998 as characters named Junior and Vincent. The casting made perfect sense when you consider the timing and the show's shared comedic sensibilities. All That had premiered in 1994 and was at the height of its popularity when The Steve Harvey Show launched in 1996. Kenan Thompson and Kel Mitchell were already working together on their Nickelodeon sitcom Kenan and Kel, which had started that same year, making them one of the most recognizable comedy duos on television at the time. What made this crossover particularly interesting was that it connected the world of children's television with a show aimed at families and adults. Thompson and Mitchell brought their signature energy and comedic timing from Nickelodeon to the WB network, appearing in episodes like Big Brothers in 1996 and Steve's Gotta Have It in 1997. Their characters Junior and Vincent fit naturally into the show's high school setting, allowing the teenage stars to play actual teenagers rather than the various adult characters they often portrayed in All That sketches. The connection became even more meaningful when Lori Beth Denberg, another All That cast member, joined The Steve Harvey Show as a series regular playing Lydia Gutman, starting in Season 3. This created an unusual situation where 3 major Nickelodeon stars were appearing on the same WB sitcom, though Denberg's role was much more substantial and long-term than Thompson and Mitchell's guest appearances. These early crossover appearances happened during a time when such collaborations between different networks and target audiences were relatively rare, making The Steve Harvey Show ahead of its time in recognizing the appeal that these young comedy stars could have with broader audiences. Fact 7. The Cosby Show replacement controversy. In 2014, The Steve Harvey Show found itself in an unexpected position when it became the replacement programming for one of television's most iconic sitcoms under deeply troubling circumstances. After sexual assault allegations against Bill Cosby began surfacing and gaining widespread media attention, WPIX, the WB's flagship station in New York, made the decision to pull The Cosby Show reruns from their schedule and replace them with reruns of The Steve Harvey Show. The Cosby Show had been a staple of syndicated television programming for decades, airing on stations across the country and generating substantial revenue through reruns. The show's wholesome family image and Bill Cosby's reputation as America's dad had made it a safe choice for daytime and early evening programming blocks. However, as multiple women came forward with allegations against Cosby starting in 2014, television networks began reconsidering whether they wanted to continue airing his content. WPIX's decision to replace The Cosby Show with The Steve Harvey Show created an interesting parallel between two African-American family sitcoms, though they had very different tones and settings. While The Cosby Show focused on an upper-middle-class family in New York, The Steve Harvey Show centered around a high school environment in Chicago, with more working-class characters and situations. The programming switch lasted from 2014 until June 2016, giving The Steve Harvey Show an unexpected second life in syndication during prime viewing hours. This replacement programming arrangement meant that The Steve Harvey Show benefited from the downfall of another show in ways that no one could have predicted when it originally aired. The series had already been successful in syndication since ending its original run in 2002, but the WPIX time slot gave it increased visibility in one of the country's largest television markets during a period when networks were actively seeking alternatives to Cosby-related content. The situation highlighted how quickly the television landscape can change when real-world events impact the entertainment industry, turning The Steve Harvey Show into an inadvertent replacement for a comedy legend whose legacy had become too controversial for broadcast television. Fact 8. Steve forced into an unwanted final season. By 2001, Steve Harvey was ready to walk away from The Steve Harvey Show and pursue new opportunities in his rapidly expanding entertainment career. The comedian had spent 5 successful seasons playing Steve Hightower, and he felt the show had run its natural course, making the decision to end the series after the 5th season wrapped up. However, the WB network had different plans and wasn't willing to let go of one of their most popular programs without a fight. Network executives at the WB insisted that Harvey film one more season, despite his clear desire to move on to other projects. The compromise they reached was unusual for television at the time. Instead of a full 22-episode season, Harvey reluctantly agreed to produce just 13 episodes for what would become the show's 6th and final season. This shortened season allowed Harvey to fulfill the network's request, while still giving him the freedom to pursue his other ventures, including his radio show and stand-up career. What happened next surprised everyone involved with the production. The 6th season, which Harvey had been reluctant to make and which featured nearly half the episodes of a typical television season, ended up scoring higher ratings than both the 4th and 5th seasons. This rare achievement in television proved that sometimes less can indeed be more, as the condensed storytelling and the knowledge that this was truly the final season seemed to energize both the cast and the audience. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on anyone. Harvey had wanted to end the show when he felt it was still strong, but the network's insistence on one more season resulted in some of the series' best-received episodes. The final season wrapped up storylines effectively, gave characters proper send-offs, and delivered the kind of satisfying conclusion that many long-running shows struggle to achieve. This unusual situation demonstrated how network interference doesn't always hurt a show's quality, and sometimes the pressure of creating a final season can actually inspire everyone involved to deliver their best work, even when the star would rather be doing something else entirely. Fact 9. The show's identity crisis name. Throughout the Steve Harvey Show's 6-season run, Steve Harvey's character consistently called the school principal Regina Greer by the nickname Piggy, a term of endearment that stemmed from their shared high school history, but carried implications that would likely raise eyebrows in today's television landscape. The show established that Steve and Regina had attended high school together years earlier, and during that time, Regina had been significantly overweight, earning her the unfortunate nickname that Steve continued to use well into their adult professional relationship. The backstory revealed that Regina had undergone a dramatic physical transformation between high school and her current role as principal of Booker T. Washington High School, evolving from the overweight teenager that Steve remembered into the confident, attractive, and highly educated woman played by Wendy Raquel Robinson. However, Steve's continued use of her childhood nickname served as a constant reminder of her former appearance, creating both comedic moments and romantic tension between the two characters throughout the series. The show used this nickname as a running gag and a way to establish the long history between Steve and Regina, often playing it for laughs when Steve would slip and call her Piggy in front of other faculty members or students. Regina's reactions to the nickname varied from embarrassed to annoyed to occasionally amused, depending on the context and her mood in any given episode. The nickname also served as a plot device to explore themes about body image, self-confidence, and how people change over time. While the show treated this element as harmless nostalgia between old friends, the concept of repeatedly calling someone by a nickname based on their former weight would likely be viewed much differently by contemporary audiences and television standards. The late 1990s and early 2000s had different sensitivities around body shaming and workplace appropriateness than exist today, making Piggy an example of how comedy that seemed acceptable at the time can feel problematic when viewed through a modern lens. The nickname represented one of many ways that The Steve Harvey Show reflected the comedic standards and social attitudes of its era. Fact 10. Emmy snub sparks conspiracy theories. The Steve Harvey Show achieved remarkable success during its six-season run, winning an impressive 14 NAACP Image Awards and maintaining solid ratings throughout its time on the WB network. However, despite this recognition and popularity, the show was completely shut out of both Emmy and Golden Globe nominations, creating a stark contrast that didn't go unnoticed by fans and industry observers who began questioning whether Hollywood's most prestigious awards were overlooking quality programming led by African-American performers. The NAACP Image Awards recognized the Steve Harvey Show's excellence multiple times, with Steve Harvey himself winning 4 awards and the show taking home honors for Outstanding Comedy Series in 2000, 2001, and 2002. The show's writing, acting, and overall production quality earned consistent praise from audiences and critics who appreciated its authentic portrayal of education, friendship, and community within a predominantly black setting. Yet when Emmy and Golden Globe nominations were announced year after year, The Steve Harvey Show was nowhere to be found among the comedy series categories. This absence became particularly glaring when compared to other sitcoms from the same era that received multiple nominations and wins from these mainstream awards organizations. The pattern led some fans and media commentators to openly speculate about whether there was an institutional bias against recognizing shows that featured primarily African-American casts and dealt with experiences specific to Black communities. One particularly vocal fan review captured this frustration, stating that the show captured greatness but expressing surprise that it was never nominated for an Emmy or Golden Globe, suggesting that Hollywood didn't want to recognize the greats. This sentiment reflected a broader conversation about representation and recognition in the entertainment industry during the late 1990s and early 2000s. The discrepancy between the show's success with audiences, its recognition from the NAACP, and its complete absence from Emmy and Golden Globe consideration became a talking point that extended beyond just this one series, raising questions about how different awards organizations evaluate and honor television programming, particularly when it comes to shows that center Black experiences and perspectives. Fact 11. Real pregnancy written into fiction. During the production of The Steve Harvey Show's 6th and final season, the writers found themselves needing to incorporate a real-life development into their fictional storyline when actress Terry J. Vaughn, who played the beloved secretary Lovita Jenkins, became pregnant in real life. Rather than trying to hide her pregnancy or write her character out of episodes, the show's creators decided to weave this development into the series finale in a way that perfectly captured Lovita's over-the-top personality and luck. The writers created a storyline where Lovita and her husband Cedric win the lottery during the final episode, giving the couple an incredibly fortunate and dramatic send-off that matched the show's comedic tone. However, they didn't stop there with the good fortune. As if winning a massive amount of money wasn't enough excitement for one episode, creating a double dose of life-changing events that would have been almost too ridiculous to believe if it weren't happening to a character known for her unpredictable and dramatic moments. This decision to incorporate Vaughn's real pregnancy into the show's conclusion demonstrated the close relationship between the cast and the writing staff, who were willing to adjust their planned storylines to accommodate the actress's personal life. The timing worked out perfectly since the show was ending anyway, allowing Lovita's character to experience both financial windfall and motherhood as her final moments on screen. The combination of winning the lottery and giving birth in the series finale created an appropriately chaotic and joyful ending for Lovita, a character who had always brought energy and unexpected developments to every episode she appeared in. Vaughn's real-life pregnancy became the inspiration for one of the show's most memorable and emotionally satisfying conclusions, proving that sometimes the best writing comes from incorporating the authentic experiences of the people bringing the characters to life. The finale aired on February 17, 2002, giving both Lovita and Terry J. Vaughn a memorable farewell from the show that had made them household names. Fact 12. Both lead actors were left-handed. One of the more unusual coincidences on The Steve Harvey Show involved a shared physical trait between the show's two most prominent characters that became an unexpected detail woven throughout the series. Both Steve Harvey, who played the former funk star turned music teacher Steve Hightower, and Merlin Santana, who portrayed the smooth-talking student Romeo, were left-handed in real life, and this characteristic carried over into their on-screen performances throughout the show's six-season run. Left-handedness affects only about 10% of the population, making it statistically uncommon for two major characters on the same television show to share this trait by pure chance. However, rather than trying to hide or change this natural characteristic, the show's directors and writers allowed both actors to perform their roles using their dominant left hands, creating subtle moments throughout various episodes where viewers could observe both characters writing, gesturing, and handling objects in ways that reflected their real-life handedness. This shared trait became particularly noticeable during classroom scenes, where Steve would write on the blackboard, or when Romeo would take notes or work on assignments at his desk. The continuity of their left-handedness added an authentic touch to their performances, since forcing actors to use their non-dominant hands often results in awkward or unnatural-looking movements that can distract from the overall believability of their characters. The coincidence extended beyond just the two main characters, as even some other cast members were noted to be left-handed, including T.K. Carter, who played T-Bone in Steve's fictional band during the early seasons. This clustering of left-handed performers on one show was highly unusual and created an interesting behind-the-scenes detail that most viewers probably never consciously noticed, but which added to the natural chemistry and flow of the performances. While left-handedness might seem like a minor detail, it represents one of those small, authentic touches that can make fictional characters feel more real and relatable, especially when the actors don't have to consciously think about changing their natural movements and behaviors for their roles. Fact 13. The mysterious strip club references. Throughout the Steve Harvey Show's 6 seasons, Steve Hightower made frequent references to a strip club called The Nasty Kitty, and often mentioned his favorite dancer there named Bubblicious, creating one of the show's most persistent running gags that operated entirely through suggestion and innuendo rather than actual visual content. These references became a regular part of Steve's character development, painting him as someone who had experienced a wilder lifestyle during his funk music days. But the show never actually showed viewers this establishment or any of the people associated with it. The Nasty Kitty served as a shorthand way for the writers to establish Steve's past as a successful musician who had enjoyed the nightlife that came with his former career, while also providing a source of ongoing comedy through his casual mentions of the place and its employees. Steve would drop references to Bubblicious and the Nasty Kitty into conversations with Cedric, Regina, and other characters, often at moments when he was reminiscing about his music career or trying to prove that he had once lived a more exciting life than his current role as a high school teacher. These references worked particularly well because they allowed the show to suggest adult content and humor without actually depicting anything that would be inappropriate for its family-friendly time slot and audience. The comedy came from Steve's matter-of-fact way of mentioning these elements of his past, treating them as normal parts of his life story, while other characters would react with varying degrees of surprise, embarrassment, or amusement. The fact that the Nasty Kitty and Bubblicious were never shown on screen made them even more effective as comedic devices, because viewers had to use their imaginations to fill in the details, often making the references funnier than any actual depiction could have been. This approach demonstrated the show's clever writing, which could create ongoing jokes and character background through dialogue alone, without needing to rely on visual gags or potentially controversial content that might have changed the show's tone or rating. Fact 14. Celebrity mistaken identity. Running gag. One of the Steve Harvey Show's most ironic running gags involved the constant failure of people to recognize Steve Hightower as the famous funk musician he claimed to be, with various characters consistently mistaking him for completely different celebrities or entertainers. Despite Steve's frequent reminders that he had been a successful recording artist with his group Steve Hightower and the High Tops during the 1970s, nearly everyone he encountered seemed to confuse him with other performers, creating an ongoing source of frustration for his character and comedy for the audience. The most memorable example of this mistaken identity theme occurred when talk show host Jerry Springer made a guest appearance on the show and referred to Steve as "that cop from the Village People," completely missing the mark on both Steve's identity and his musical genre. This mix-up was particularly absurd because the Village People were known for disco music and theatrical costumes, while Steve's character had supposedly been part of a funk group representing two entirely different musical styles and eras. The running gag worked on multiple levels because it highlighted the gap between Steve's perception of his own fame and the reality of how memorable his music career had actually been. While Steve clearly took great pride in his past success and expected people to remember his contributions to funk music, the constant cases of mistaken identity suggested that perhaps his fame hadn't been quite as widespread or lasting as he believed it to be. These moments of confusion also served to deflate Steve's ego in comedic ways, bringing his character back down to earth whenever he started getting too full of himself about his musical accomplishments. The writers used this device throughout the series to create situations where Steve would have to face the reality that his glory days might not have been quite as glorious as he remembered them, while also generating laughs from the increasingly ridiculous comparisons that other characters would make when trying to place where they recognized him from. Fact 15. The show's accidental cultural impact. The Steve Harvey Show became an unexpected source of quotable one-liners and catchphrases that extended far beyond its original television run, with one particular pun becoming so memorable that it demonstrated the series' lasting influence on 1990s comedy culture. Steve Harvey's character had a talent for creating clever comparisons that mixed pop culture references with everyday situations, and one of his most repeated lines perfectly captured this comedic style. "When I see that woman, I'm like Shaq doing Shakespeare. I just don't know how to act." This particular catchphrase worked brilliantly because it combined the image of basketball superstar Shaquille O'Neal, who was known for his physical dominance on the court rather than his dramatic acting abilities, with the sophisticated world of Shakespearean theater. The humor came from the absurd mental picture of the 7-foot-tall athlete attempting to perform classical drama, while also serving as Steve's way of expressing how attractive women could leave him feeling completely out of his element. The line became representative of Steve Harvey's comedic approach, both on the show and in his stand-up career, demonstrating his ability to create humor by juxtaposing unexpected elements in ways that were both clever and accessible to mainstream audiences. The catchphrase showed how the character could take a simple concept about being nervous around women and elevate it through creative wordplay and cultural references that resonated with viewers. What made this particular pun especially effective was its versatility, as it could be adapted to different situations while maintaining the same basic structure and comedic impact. The success of lines like this one highlighted Steve Harvey's skill at creating memorable phrases that audiences would repeat and remember long after the episodes aired, contributing to the show's cultural footprint during an era when television catchphrases played a significant role in popular comedy. The enduring popularity of this and similar lines from the show demonstrated how The Steve Harvey Show contributed to the landscape of quotable television comedy during the late 1990s and early 2000s.